In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to record MIDI and audio simultaneously when we're recording drums. Now the reason for this, you don't want to edit this afterwards, it's easier to do at the source. You're going to have your MIDI perfectly time aligned with the audio and also perfectly velocity aligned too. So when you hit that snare drum quietly, the trigger's going to pick it up quietly and the mics of course are going to pick it up quietly. I always want to do my drums in one take if I can, so doing it this way allowed me to record the MIDI and the audio simultaneously rather than having to go back and punch them in separately. Recording this way provides a lot of flexibility too, so down the line the artist, the producer, whoever's mixing and working with these tracks, they've got all the audio tracks which they can get sounding like the way they want, and then they've got the MIDI tracks that they can also get sounding the way they want too, and they can contrast or work together, and they can be layered on there too. You can have like a crazy sub kick layered on the MIDI on top of the audio drums, or you could have sort of 808 sounds, things like that. So there's lots and lots of flexibility when you record this way. So my setup today, I'm going to be using the Roland SPD-SX. I'm going to be using 4 different triggers on the kick, snare, a rack tom and a floor tom. So the triggers go into the Roland SPD-SX. That sends a MIDI signal out into my audio interface, which is the Focusrite Clarret 8 Pre, and then that goes to my computer, which I'm going to be running Logic. Of course, you can do this in any DAW, but I'm going to be showing you in Logic today. The first thing to talk about is how you're going to get your MIDI signals into your interface or into your computer. So for me, I'm using the SPD-SX, and because there's 2 dual zone inputs, that can be split to 4 mono inputs, and that's what I'm doing today. So the triggers I'm using is the Roland RT30 range. So I've got the kick, snare, rack tom and floor tom. And so those are going into the Roland SPD-SX. The really new SPD-SX Pro that just came out like 2 weeks ago, it can actually handle 8 triggers. It has 4 dual zone trigger inputs, which could be split to 8 mono if you wanted. But the cool thing with that is that you could split like the head and rim that I'm using on the snare today. It's just being used as a head trigger essentially. So it'd be cool to still keep that head and rim functionality and mic up the rest of the kit, trigger up the rest of the kit with these different triggers. I'm using Roland splitter cables as well. So obviously to get that dual zone input, you have to break it out into 2 mono cables that sum up into that stereo input. So I'm using these Roland ones. They're really good cables. They're quite expensive, but I think they're really nice. And the name of these cables is the Roland PCS-31L. Great name for a cable, I guess. And really that's all the equipment we need. So it's quite a few things to get invested in and get started. But there's other sample pads, the Alesis, the Yamaha. I'm sure you can do it that way too. You could also have a MIDI interface and have that set up and connected to your audio interface. You could possibly go into from the Roland SPD-SX to your computer over USB. I haven't tried that. You could probably create an aggregate device. The reason I didn't do that is because I want one input into Logic when I'm recording. So I set my Clarett 8 Pre as the input, and that inputs both the audio files and the MIDI signals. So everything's nicely rooted and summed into one audio interface. So let's now set up the SPD-SX. A couple of things we need to get set up here. So the first thing is to go Menu, Setup, and then down to MIDI. You guessed it. Now, this very bottom option down here, USB MIDI IF, I think that's interface, you want that to be off because we're not using it as that. If we're using the MIDI out ports, you always want this to be off, all right? USB MIDI IF needs to be off. It was driving me crazy the other day, and that's what it was, okay? Next, if we go back and then go up to trigger in, here you can set the type of triggers. So up the top here, this is triggers 3 and 4. If we go left, we're back to triggers 1 and 2. So 1 is my RT30K and 2 is my RT30HR. Now the plus and minus, once you go in input mode, the plus and minus will change that. So you can go just 1, which would be a head and rim, taking up both inputs, or you can go to your split, trigger 1 and 2, and then if you press right, That's 3 and 4. So for me, those are my tom triggers. So that's how I've got everything set up here. Once you've got that set up, a quick check we can do is to just pick a drumstick and give the drum a little bit of a hit. I'm just going to hit the rim of the snare and we should see trigger 2 light up. There we go. So test that with all your triggers and make sure that we're getting some sort of light flash whenever you hit the right trigger. From then on, we need to move on to MIDI notes. So this is where it starts to get a little complicated if we don't know what we're doing. So this is under Kit, and you see I'm on the MIDI tab down here. So you want to go, you can actually just hit the drum and that will jump to it. So let's go, I'll go left. You can go left or right on the arrows here, or you can actually hit the drum. So trigger 1, MIDI note number 36. So that is the MIDI note number for the kick in Logic. Trigger number 2 is 38. That is the snare drum number. Trigger 3 is my high tom, it's 48. And trigger 4 is a floor tom, it's set to 41. So these can be quite hard to find out, it's just a bit of experimenting. If it's not the sound you want, just hit plus or minus and it'll take you to 40, 39, 38, right? So just keep cycling through to get the sounds that you want. And really, that is our settings. So name a kit, something that you'll remember, and you can just pull up these settings whenever you record. And stick to these settings and you should be all good. Now let's jump over into Logic. We're going to open up Logic here. You could do this in your DAW. And this is my template. Actually, I think I want to do it about 90 today. So you can actually download this template at my website. I'll leave the link below. Here we go. All right, so my template has all these multi-track drums. So if we record, enable these, we should be good to go. And so what you want to do is right click here and go new software instrument track. It defaults to piano. And if you open up your library here, go to drum kit. Now you could use any of these drums, any of these drum kits, but the coolest ones are the producer kits, and you'll know that with the plus. So let's go for Manchester. All right. Now you'll see there's another track stack, just like my template has a track stack for the actual audio multi-track drums. There's a track stack for the MIDI multi-track drums. And you can already see we're going to get overheads, kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom. We're going to get all this with our MIDI drums. All right. So let me get my metronome on. I'm going to set this back to the start and I'm going to hit record. So here we go. And that is our recording. So if we go back to the beginning here, and if we open this up, you can see we've got all of our multi-track audio files, and then down here we've got our multi-track MIDI. So I'm going to mute the, oh, it's already muted. So let's check out the MIDI. So this Manchester kit's pretty cool. And there would be just the overheads. So we've got some cool panning going on there. Kick in. Back to the beginning, play it again. So this is insanely cool. We've even got a nice room. So yeah, there we go. And just so you can hear it too, here's our audio. I'll solo this. I'll mute these. That's the two together. So this just sounds mega, and it gives so many options for the artists or the producer to, because it's MIDI, they can drag and drop different sounds for each of these. Because this is multi-track, they can really affect certain parts of the kit. I don't even know how they do this, how they get a snare top and a snare bottom, but it is very cool and I love it. So I just wanted to share that with everyone today. And so there we have it. I hope that was a useful video. The biggest headache for me was trying to get the MIDI signals into Logic. Everything was correct. The only thing that I had wrong was I had the MIDI USB interface on, and when I turned it off, it all worked no problem. So I was really pulling my hair out. So hopefully that helps someone else and you don't have the same issue that I did. So it's a lot of fun recording this way. It gives you a lot more options. The cool thing is as well, if you have all the MIDI sounds that the artist wants when you record them, you can record with that sound. So you can monitor that through your headphones as you're tracking. And you know, when you hear those sounds, you play a little bit differently. So it's a really cool way to actually record. And if they want to be altered later on, they can easily be altered and you don't have to re-record everything. And it's cool. Everything's perfectly time aligned, velocity aligned, the MIDI and the audio. So it's really, really cool. So my last SPD-SX video got quite a lot of views, more than I ever thought it would. So let me know what you think of this one, and let me know if there's any other topics you want me to cover with the SPD-SX. Maybe one day I can get my hands on the Pro model. So Roland, if you want to send one over, that'd be great. That'd be great. It's pretty expensive, I have to say. It's like £1,000 here. I think it's $1,200 in the US. So I feel like it should have replaced the current SPD-SX. Whereas they keep that around and now they've just got the Pro, but the old one's been around for 11 years, like, anyway, whatever. But that'd be cool to play with more trigger inputs and just the newer features it has. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.